So let me check my server. Yeah, my server is been running, and now I have my two forms. So let me post the data first. So data that I want to post, let's say I want to make a new variable. I'll say ASDF. Then I want to enter the music genre. Alright, so I'll say rap, and I want to enter the game. I want to enter new game. I'll say Warzone. I'll say submit, and it has been added. If I go to my Mongo, the record has actually been added, and now I can retrieve it. So inside retrieve data using name, I'll say ASDF. I'll say submit and get date. Okay, it is actually been retrieved from the database. And this is actually an entire full stack application, because you have Flask, you have JavaScript, and you have MongoDB. Hey everyone, my name is Ronak, back with another video, and in this video you are going to learn to prepare a Flask system that is going to connect to a Mongo, and this is going to be a full stack application. So this video will be done right from the scratch, where I'll show you the basics of the MongoDB and how you can connect them with the Flask and perform the REST calls which will be connected to a front end. So let us get started. So the first thing that you will have to do is install the MongoDB. So on the browser you can search for MongoDB, and you can come across the MongoDB website, where let's say you go to this, okay, so which is www.mongodb.com, and here you will have to go to the software. Okay, when you hover on the software, so they have many products. So there is something known as Atlas, alright, which is a live thing, and there is software which is a free and open document database, which is community server. So you will have to click on this community server, and when you come to this community server, you have an option to download. Okay, so if you are using some any other, so it is most probably going to auto detect the system, but when you come over here, you can actually even change the things you want. Okay, you can either select zip or MSI and whatnot. All right, so they provide you the database locally, so just click on the download and install it. Installation is very standard. Okay, you just have to click next till you get installed, and this is done. So how do we actually activate the MongoDB? So I am going to use the terminal provided to us within the VS Code. You can also use the command prompt if you want. All right, so I'll say control backtack. So that is the shortcut in order to get started. Let me zoom it. So considering this, you can, so this is actually using a PowerShell by default, but you can also change it to the CMD. Okay, like I said, you can select the CMD anyway. So you will first have to redirect to where the files of the MongoDB reside. Okay, so there are many options where you can also add it to the environment variables and whatnot. Okay, so many people usually do that, but the way I am going to show you is, once you install it, you will also get an option known as something known as Mongo Compass. So this Compass is actually a great toolkit. Okay, it is a software with which you can connect and interact with the MongoDB. So right before we actually even move on to a lot of things, I want to show you what really is MongoDB. So MongoDB, first of all, is a NoSQL database. Okay, so NoSQL is, it is not going to follow the SQL properties. So it is not going to follow the ACID properties. Okay, so ACID properties are the main protocols followed for the SQL, and it is not going to follow them, because MongoDB uses a JSON-like structure and it works on the document orientation. Okay, so all of the records stored in a MongoDB database are with respect to the documents. All right, and it is a NoSQL database. So that is the thing, and today we are going to make a very simple system that can actually help us identify whatever we have to do. So you will have to redirect to it. So I'll say cd ... so which is, I'm just coming out of all of the directories. All right, and just go to the C, then go to the program files. After that, you will have to go to the MongoDB where you have usually installed it. Okay, so MongoDB is the name of the folder, which if you just go with the standard installation, all right, just check where the path of your MongoDB is. After that, you will have to go to something known as server. Then you will have to go to something known as the version of it. So mine's 5. This is going to be a standard one. Once you have installed it, okay, you will actually able to see the version, not an issue. Then you will have to go to cd bin. And now if I check the files over here, I have many files. So I'll have to select mongo.exe. So whenever I type mongo over here, this mongo states that just start the MongoDB server. All right, so let me try it like this. So I'll say mongo.exe. All right, so it gets started, and once you start the server, this is supposed to be running, all right, all the time, because we are going to interact with the Flask. This is locally. If you are working with an online database, like I said, you don't really have to worry about starting the server and whatnot. We can directly, hop onto the Flask. but since we are running this locally, I'm just showing you. So if I say show DBS, I can view all of the databases that I already have, and I can even make a new one. So today we are going to use something. So I'll say use. So our system that I'm going to build is going to, let's say, have your name. After that, the genre of the music that you like, and let's say the games that you would actually play. Alright, so those are some of the things that the system is going to store. Alright, so just 3 things, so that we can just differentiate, okay, what we have to do and everything like that. Alright, so just say use, and you will have to type the name of the database that you want. Okay, so I will say favorite info. Alright, FAV info. So it says switch to DB favorite info, and now if I say show DBS, if I actually get out of that and try to show it, it is going to show me the favorite info, since I am now currently using favorite info. So it is a collection, okay, and in this collection you can actually start working with the data. Alright, so let's say I have to make data. So the way I'm going to do it, I'll say db dot favorite info, that is the name of my collection, dot I'm going to say insert, and now this data is always in the form of the JSON. Alright, so here I'm going to say name, and let me put my name itself. So I'll say Ronak, then I put a comma. Alright, so then we are going to move on something with the favorite genre of the music that we listen to. So I usually listen to the metal music, and after that, let's say favorite game. Alright, and favorite game, I have many favorite games, but let us say Witcher, and it says right result inserted. So the data has been inserted into my MongoDB. Now if I say db dot favorite info, that is the name of my collection, dot find, and just put like this, I get the record. Okay, so it has been stored, and since it is an unstructured database, you can install anything you want. Literally, you can store images, you can store videos, you can store anything. Okay, so it is not going to restrict you with the, like I said, the asset properties and whatnot. Okay, this is not, I would say, a preferable database if you are looking forward to work with, let's say, authentication systems. All right, so it works very well when you are working with, let's say, something that is unstructured and in massive forms, like videos, images, audio clips, information like that. All right, location. So those are the type of the data that will be particularly stored in the Mongo. Similarly, I can also add one more record. Okay, so just so that we can later on fetch it in the Flask, and I can differentiate between them. So I'll say insert, and let me say name over here is going to be ABC, just generic name. All right, and let me say the favorite genre, and let's say jazz. All right, and favorite game, so let me select game. Okay, so let's say Minecraft. So record has been inserted, and now if I say find, I'll get 2 records. Similarly, I can even call one record with respect to a particular thing. So I can say if name is equal to ABC, show me the record. Okay, so it is 1 record. So this is the way the Mongo works, and now the server is up and running. All right, so server is supposed to be running. So whatever we are going to do, we are going to do it in another terminal. This terminal should not close. All right, so I'll just close this with the control back tag. I'll go over here and I'll make a new file, which is app.py. So let us now start with our Flask. So there are certain things that you are going to require. So I'll come over here, I'll say a new terminal. All right, and here I'll say pip install flask underscore pymongo. All right, so there are 2 requirements that you will have to install. So it says requirement already satisfied for me because I have already installed the thing. If you haven't, please do install it. Next step that we will have to do, so first we'll say from Flask import Flask. All right, and now I'm going to make my route. So I'll say app. First of all, I'm going to say app is equal to Flask and underscore name underscore. Okay, so I'm not going to cover Flask in detail because I have made many videos, and this is a form of the tutorial in which you are going to learn to interact using the CRUD operations for the MongoDB. Anyway, so I'll say def basic, that is the name of my function, and it returns something, and this goes in an entry point if name equal to main. All right, it's supposed to be enclosed in the string. I'll say app.run with the debug, is equal to true. Okay, so in the production you have to close the debug, and this is it. Okay, so my basic Flask application is ready, and now we will actually start with the Mongo. So here I'm going to say from Flask underscore pymongo, I'm going to import pymongo. All right, so this is the first step that you will have to work on particularly. Then you will have to call it. Okay, so the way we are going to do it, you will have to say app.config, and here you will have to say mongo URI. All right, so this is where you have to feed the link for your Mongo database, and it interacts with the link as mongo ://localhost, since I'm on my local machine, :27017, and this is going to be same for every single one of them. All right, and then you will have to specify with slash the name of the collection that you particularly want to work on. Okay, so I'll say fav info, which is my favorite info, and the connection has been established. It is MongoDB. And now next step is you have to enclose that into a Mongo object. Okay, so you can have to say, so I'm making a Mongo object with pymongo, which is going to ingest app. So this is where the connection has been established for the Mongo. Now we will actually start working with our first function. So here I'm going to say method is equal to, let's say, get. Okay, so whenever we come across the CRUD operations, which is create, retrieve, update, delete, all of the methods used are get, post is to post the data, put is to update the data, delete is to remove from the record, and get is to get the data whatever you have. Okay, so here we will say retrieve all. All right, so this function is responsible for retrieving all of the data, and we can say current collection. All right, so my current collection is favorite info, so I will have to say mongo, that is the pymongo where I have specified the app, mongo.db.favorite info. So this is my current collection. Now inside this I am going to say for I in, all right, for I in current collection dot, I have to say find. So find is a command. Okay, so I have already shown you over here. When we say find, I can get all of the details. All right, so whenever I am doing something like that, I want to now give it as a response. All right, so and the way I do it, I'll import here after Flask something known as JSONify. So this JSONify will help us JSONify the data with which we can actually pass it as a REST request. And here I'm going to let's say make a list. So I'll say holder and I'll say list. All right, and this holder is going to responsible in order to hold the data. So I'll say holder.append, and inside this I'm going to say, so I'm actually going to JSONify this. Okay, so I'll say name and I'll say I, which is going to call the name. All right, because if we check the collection over here, we have name, we have favorite genre, and we have favorite game. So data is going to be retrieved in this format from the MongoDB. So we will have to specifically use this in order to pass it to our API, because we are going to retrieve that using Flask. All right, so first is I'm going to retrieve with respect to I the name. All right, then I'm going to retrieve the genre, and this genre will be linked to the favorite genre, as you can see in the Mongo collection. After that I'm going to use the game, and the game is going to be linked using I with favorite game, and I'm done. Okay, so my holder is now a list that holds all of my data, and now I'm going to return it. So I'll say return, I'll say JSONify, and I'm going to pass the holder. That's it. Okay, so my get method is ready. So now I'm going to run this thing. Okay, so whilst the Mongo is running, okay, please understand this, the Mongo server is supposed to be running. In the PowerShell, I'm going to say py app.py. Okay, so my server has been started. Now I'll go to something known as Postman. So please install this Postman if you haven't. This is a very, I would say, handy tool in order to start working. So here I'm going to say new, I'll say HTTP request. All right, and here I'm going to say localhost :5000. All right, and I'm going to say send. Okay, so I'm sending a request and I get the details I have. And now if I make some changes in the Mongo, let's say, so in the Mongo I'm going to add something. So let me say db dot favorite info dot I'll say insert and inside this insert, let's say I'm going to put the name, let's say def. All right, and the favorite genre of the music is going to be, let's say, blues, and later on let's say favorite game is going to be, let's say, Valorant. Okay, so one more record has been inserted. Now if I say send, I can see 3. All right, so it has changed significantly. We can see the data. So this is actually being stored inside a database, that is the MongoDB, and it is interacting. All right, so this is the one of the most coolest things. Now I want to, similarly, just like I am retrieving, I want to retrieve with respect to name. All right, so I am going to give the name from which I am going to see. Names can be different, but we basically want to retrieve the data with the name. Okay, let's say current record. So I'll say app.route, and I'm going to say after slash, I'm going to put name like this. All right, and the method is, let's say, going to be get, and I'll say retrieve from name. Okay, so that is the name of the function, where name is a parameter I'm passing from my app.route, that is my decorator. And here I'm going to say correct collection is equal to mongo.db.favorite info. All right, and I'm actually trying to retrieve it via name. All right, so just a generic heads up. So the way I'm going to do it, since I want just one of them, I'm going to say let's say data is equal to current collection dot find 1. All right, so I'm going to find 1, and I'm going to find it with respect to let's say the name. So here I want to make it a form. All right, so the most important thing that we have to consider over here is the method. So I can actually even put a post method since I want to make changes, but let us now work with the URL itself. Why not just URL, let's say. All right, so I'm going to work with the URL like this, and I'm going to, let's say, return JSONify, and here I'll say data with the data. All right, something like that. So this is going to be a JSON data that I'm going to pass after JSONifying. And now let us check. Okay, so my server, I'll have to check, is up and running. I'll go to the postman, and here now I'm going to say /abc. Okay, so I get an error. Let us check the error. Okay, so JSON, it says is not serializable. Okay, so the way you can do it, you can say like this. You can say name is equal to data name. Since the dictionary will be captured from the Mongo, so I will have to specify it with the key so that I can retrieve the value. That is one of the things. Then here I can say favorite genre. All right, and the next thing that we have to focus is the game, and this game is, let's say, going to be data, and it is going to be favorite game. All right, so I'll save it. Server is running. I'll go to the postman, I'll say send, and I get the value. Okay, so this is the way it actually works, pretty decent. Now let us see. So this is all about the retrieving. All right, but now let us assume that I want to post something. I want to take a new value. I want to add that value into my Mongo. So I'm going to say app.route, and I'm going to say, let's say, post data. That is the name of the route. And methods, I'll say is equal to post. So this route is only going to work with the post method. So here I'll say post data, and this function is supposed to give me the post data. So here I'm going to again say current collection, which is going to be mongo.db.favorite info. And now I want to add data. So for this, I'm going to request the JSON because I'm going to pass JSON. Okay, so since it is a REST format, so I'll say name. So right before that, I'll go over here, and after JSONify, I'm going to import request. Okay, so say this request is going to be used. So I'll say name. Since I'm going to retrieve the name, I'll say request.json, and I'm going to take name. After that, I'm going to take genre. So I'm going to say request.json. And after JSON, the key is going to be genre while passing from the data. And finally we have something known as game. So I'm going to say request.json. So I'm going to pass a JSON data using my Postman. All right, and here I'm going to say game, and now I got all of these. Okay, so now I want to insert them into my database. So I'm going to say current collection dot insert, and after insert here I'm going to say, let's say name. After name is going to be passed, that is the variable I'll be getting from the Postman. Then I'll be getting the favorite genre, which is going to ingest the genre that I'm going to pass from my form. And finally I'm going to give it the favorite game, which is going to take the game. All right, and now here I'm going to return the JSONify saying that, so I'll say response, and let me say, or we can do it like this. Okay, so whatever data has been inserted, we are going to display it. All right, so that is one of the great things so that I can do. Okay, so here I'm going to copy this thing itself from the insert, and instead of game I just want to say game. Okay, I'm not much more focusing, so I'll say genre over here, and name is fine. Okay, so I'll just save this. Server is up and running. Now I'll come over here, I'll go to the body, I'll go to the raw, and here after raw I'm going to click on the text, and I am going to go to the JSON, which is JavaScript object notation. After that, here I'm going to get rid of this first of all, and here I'm going to now insert the data. Okay, so this is the JSONified data. So I'm going to say name, and let me enter a name. So I'll say ZXC, I'll put a comma, then I'm going to pass it the favorite genre, or here we are passing it using the genre. So I'll have to say genre, and let's say hip hop, and finally I'm going to say game. All right, so let's say cyberpunk 77. All right, and here now I will have to go to the post method, since I'm applying a post method on it. All right, I'm sorry, it is post data. All right, so URL is post data, so I'll say post data, and now I'm going to send, and it has been inserted. Okay, so my data is inserted, and now if I come over here and I go to my Mongo, and I'll say db dot, I'll say favorite info, that is the name of my collection, dot find. All right, I want to check all the records, and I have it. Okay, so ZXC has been added with the hip hop as the favorite generation and favorite game as cyberpunk 2077. So that is the way you can actually perform a post request. Very decent way to perform the post request. Very simple, I would say, not even decent, very simple and generic. Now next is the delete. So now here I'm going to make a new route, which is going to be a deletion. So I'll say app.route, because we want to perform all the CRUD operations. Okay, I'll say slash followed by, let's say, delete data, and the method is going to take something known as delete. All right, and the function is, let's say, delete data, and now I want to make this let's say I want to delete with respect to the name that I am giving it. Okay, this is not a sustainable approach. The reason is there can be multiple names, so I'm supposed to use something known as object ID, but let us say I just want to delete using the name in this case. Okay, I'll say name over here, I'm going to pass name over here, and I want to delete, so I'll just copy this one now at the moment. So here I'm going to say current collection is equal to MongoDB with the favorite info, and now I'm going to say current collection dot. So since I now want to delete the stuff, because so far now we have been, let's say, inserting, so I'll say delete underscore 1. All right, and now this is going to take a query. So this query is going to be, let's say, name, because I'm deleting with respect to name, and I'm going to pass that name, and now I'll return the JSONified thing. So I'll say, let us say I want to view everything. So that can be one of the methods. Otherwise, let's say we can redirect. Okay, so let me try that. So I'll say return, and let me redirect. Okay, so I'll have to import it over here. So I'll say redirect, and I'll say return redirect, and I'm going to give it the name of the function. So I'll say retrieve all. All right, and my server, I think, is up and running. Now I'll go over here, and instead of post data, I'm going to say delete data, and I'm now going to remove this ZXC that I have been inserted. I'll go over here, I'll say delete, I'll say send. Okay, so it says method is not allowed. Okay, so we will have to check what the error is. The operation has failed actually. Delete data. Okay, so I think it is the issue with the retrieve all. So I made a silly mistake over here. I'll just get rid of this. I'll have to say URL for, and after that I'll have to put that name of the function, okay, which is retrieve all. And server is up and running. I'll go over here. I'll say send. Okay, and as we can see, the gxe has been removed. Now instead of gxe, if I try to remove def, which is this record, and now I say send, it is also gone. All right, and if I check in my Mongo, okay, so I'll say, and only 2 records are there. Okay, so this is actually being stored and removed from the database. So this is the thing that you can pretty much work on. And the last thing that we want to focus is inside the CRUD. So create, I have did using insert, retrieve, I have done, updation is remaining. Okay, CRUD stands for create, retrieve, update, delete, in which now we have to work on update. I have also shown you delete. So here I'm going to say app.route, and here I'm going to say update. So this update is let's say going to update the name. Okay, so with respect to name only I'm going to do it, and the methods over here is going to be put. All right, now here I'm going to say update data, and it is going to take the name. All right, and in a similar fashion I'm going to take the collection. All right, and the next step I want to do is let's say current collection. So now I want to change the name, let's say. Okay, so this is actually going to take the data from the JSON-ified version. Okay, because we want to give it the name and I want to change that name. Okay, so that is one of the major things I want to do. And the way I do it, so I am going to say, let's say name is equal to request.json, and I want to pass name. Alright, this is the first thing. After that I'm going to say current collection dot update. Alright, so this is the function update, and inside, so update I'm actually going to say update 1. Alright, so that is the thing, and here I'm going to say name, which is going to, let's say, take the name. Okay, so name is going to take the name, and here I can actually say updated name, because that is the right way to put it. So I'm going to say updated name. So in update I want to update the name. All right, so with respect to the name I want to update the name with the updated name. So here I'm going to now say $set, all right, followed by a comma, and like this. Okay, so this is the way you actually work with it, and here after the name you have to say updated name. Okay, so this is the command with which you are probably going to work. Okay, so this is the way it actually works. So okay, so let me reiterate through entire thing what is happening over here. So we are going to pass it with the update route. I'm going to pass it the name that I want to update. All right, so it is going to take the request in the form of the JSON. It is going to take the name. It is trying to go to update that name. So whilst updating, it is going to hold the name that I'm trying to update with the first. So if the name is present in this, it is going to say $set, that is the name, that is the function it is using, and then it is going to update that name with the updated name that I passed through the JSON, and followed by that I can say return redirect as usual with the URL for let's say retrieve all. Okay, so that is the great route. All right, so retrieve all. Now I'm going to save it, and let me check my server is up and running. So I'll come over here and I'll now say update, and in the update I want to update the name. So let's say the name that I want to update first of all is, let's say, going to be Ronak. I want to update that Ronak to gxe. All right, this gxe. So I'm going to go over here. I'm going to select put. I'm going to say send. All right, so some error is there. Let us check. Okay, so see, it says unhashable type dictionary. All right, let me check. Okay, so updated name. I get the error. It is a silly error. Okay, so I have selected comma. It is supposed to be like this. And server is up and running. Now I'll come over here. I'll say send. And it has been done. So here it was Ronak. It has been changed to ZXC. Now similarly, I'll select ZXC over here. And here I'm going to change it to Ronak once again. I'm going to say send. And it has been done. Okay, so these are the most basic form of the commands that you can work with. Now we are going to work on our front end. So this front end is going to be, let's say I'm going to do two things. So let's say I want to retrieve the records and I want to post the data. So that is something I am particularly interested in. So here I'm going to make a new folder. I'll say front end, and inside this front end I'm going to say index.html. Alright, so this is going to be a simple index.html file. And inside this front end, I'm again going to make a new file known as script.js, because we will have to write JavaScript in order to handle the data that we are getting from, let's say, here. Alright. So I can retrieve with, let's say, a lot of things. So let's say I want to work on the retrieving the entire thing. After that, I want to retrieve with respect to, let's say, one data and post. Okay, so this might be quite a tedious process. So I'll try the most basic thing. So by default, it is going to retrieve everything. That is some of the things that we can work on. But let's say I want to update with respect to the name. Okay, so I'm going to pass the name using a form, and we are supposed to update it. So here I'm going to say form, and inside this form I'm going to say let's say ID. I'll say form data. So this has an input field with the type as let's say text, and with the ID as the name. All right, and I have a submit button. So I'll say input type submit. So whenever I click on the submit, my data will be submitted and I'll get a response. Okay, so that is a very simple thing that we have to do it over here. And here I'm going to pass the script with src as script. So I'm going to say script.js. Okay, so this is my JavaScript. And now I'll come over here. I'm going to say document.getElement by ID. I'm sorry, it is getElement by ID. And I'm going to pass the ID of my form, which is form data. So here I'm going to say form data, and this form data will be interacting with let's say the button. Okay, so whenever I click on the button, particularly I want one action to be performed. So I'm going to say add event listener for the submit, and here I'm going to require a function. Okay, so I want to say retrieve name. All right, so I'm going to pass a name and I want to retrieve the name, that data. And the way I do it, so here I'm going to say retrieve, I'm going to say function retrieve name. Okay, so this is the function that I'm going to work on now. So this function is going to be responsible in order to handle the data that we have from our Flask. So here I'm going to say e, and here I'm going to say e.prevent default. So this is actually responsible so that whenever you start the form, it is not going to select the submit by default. Okay, so that is the thing we have to do it over here. And now here I'm going to say let name is equal to document.getElement by ID. And now the ID is going to be passed for the name, okay, which is my text. So I'm going to say name over here, and after that I'll say value. All right, so I want that value of the name. And now I'm going to actually catch this using the fetch API. So I'm going to say fetch. All right, and here I'm going to say http://localhost 5000. But since we are going to pass the name, all right, because if we check the URL, you can see we actually pass the name. Okay, so we want to pass that name, and in order to do that, I'm going to use the back tag over here. All right, first thing I'm going to use a back tag, then I'm going to say slash followed by a dollar and open and close curly braces where I'm going to pass that name. And now I want a response, so I'll say then, and I'll make a function. So I'll say res, which is going to take response.json. All right, and after I get the response, I'm going to use that data to console log. So I'm going to say data, and I'll make an arrow function. I'll say data. So not data, I'll say console.log with data, and that's it. Okay, so my function is ready. Very, I would say, basic function, nothing much fancy. So let me save it. So yeah, I have it. Okay, so nothing fancy. So this is going to be operated. Now I'm actually using something known as live share. Okay, so if you go to the extensions and you search for live server, you'll actually come across this server. Okay, so this server is responsible for the interaction of the HTML files. All right, so with this you can actually open the live server and work with it. Okay, so this actually works within the VS Code. So I'll go to I'll say right click, I'll say command palette, and here I'm going to say live server, and I'm going to say open with live server. Okay, and it is going to redirect you over here. So I have my form, very dirty form, and here we can actually enter the name that we want to follow. Okay, so the latest names I have is something known as ABC and Ronak. So here I'm going to say ABC, I'm going to say submit, and it is going to give us the course error. So now we will have to actually work with this course error, and we are going to tackle this error in the Flask itself. And the way we do it, so here in the Flask, I'm going to say from Flask underscore course, I'm going to import course, and I'm going to import cross origin. Okay, so these are the two things that you have to import. Then here you have to say app.config, and this configuration is going to ask for course, where you are going to say content type. So it is a course headers which is taking content type, and next thing is I want to specify course also. So I'll say course with CORS, and it is going to take my app. Okay, so my course is configured like this, and finally whenever I want to apply it, so here now I'm going to go to the route, and here I'm going to say cross origin. Okay, so I'm going to pass that decorator, and it is ready. Okay, so this is the way it usually works. So now I want to check my server. My server is up and running, and I'll go over here and I'll say submit, and I have it. Okay, so my data is actually being retrieved from my, so if I check in the console, my data is being actually retrieved. All right, and now I want that data to be inside the inner HTML. Okay, so this data I don't want in the console, I want it to be displayed on my web page. So here after form, I'm going to say, I'm going to put a break, and here I'm going to put a div, and this div is actually going to have an ID known as output. All right, and inside my script I'm going to make some significant changes. Okay, so instead of the console.log, here now I'm going to say document.getElement by ID, which is going to take my output dot inner HTML is equal to, so after that it is going to ask you for the entire data. And the way we do it, so I'm going to pass that data. So I'm going to say name, and inside the back tag already. Okay, so I'll put a dollar with a close and open curly parenthesis. I'm going to say data.name. Similarly, after name, I'm going to say genre. So I'm going to say genre, and this genre is going to be data.favorite. Okay, so let me check the data. And if the data that I'm passing from my app is basically name, genre, and data. Here I'm going to say genre, and finally we have something known as game. So this game is going to be dollar open close curls with data.game. That's it. And now let me check it. Okay, so yeah, it is ready. So I'll come over here, I'll say submit, and I have it. Okay, so it is actually being displayed. Now let us make some little bit of changes in order to make this look a little bit more good. Alright, so I now want to work with the, let's say, Bootstrap. So I'll go to my browser, I'll search for Bootstrap. So Bootstrap is one of the commonly used things, and I am going to copy this CSS. Alright, so this is a CDN. Alright, so I'm going to copy this CSS. I'm going to go to my index, I'll post it over here. Okay, so this is my CSS. I have my CSS, and instead of document, I'm going to say Flask Mongo. All right, and I have it. Okay, so I'll actually get rid of this dirty looking form itself, and I'll make some changes over here. So I want to make a collapsing form of data. So instead of that, what I'll do is I'll go to the docs. I'll go to the components, and inside the components I'll go to the navbar. So actually you can copy a lot of stuff from here. Okay, so you don't have to explicitly sit and code the entire thing. Okay, so you can actually select something that is already available to us. So I can just select this one, okay, which is the navbar. Alright, so I'll just select the navbar. Alright, so I'll come to the body and I'll paste that. Okay, since my bootstrap is activated, I can easily use it, not an issue. So I'll just save it, and if I check, my navbar is actually coming. Alright, so I can actually make some changes. So inside the navbar content, I can say Flask Mongo system, or let's say favorite info system. Alright, and it's actually okay. So I'll have to change the text also. I can either say text light. Okay, so I have something known as favorite info system, and after that navbar I'm going to put an HR. Okay, so there is a change over here, and now let us now work with let's say the form. All right, so this is, I would say, kind of bootstrap. Okay, so a lot of bootstrap can be done. It is up to you. So I'll make a button, and this button is going to hold some parameters. So I am actually going to use the collapse. Okay, so I'm going to say class btn with the btn as let's say dark data bs toggle data bs toggle. Okay, so this is entirely available to you in the bootstrap. Okay, so and then I'm going to say collapse. After that I'm going to pass an href, and this is going to go to our, let's say, form. Okay, so let's say retrieve form, that is the name of the form that we have, and I can make that ID. Okay, that is the reason I'm using an hash over there. After that I'll have to say role, so I'll say role, and the role is going to be button, and later on I'll say area banded, so it is going to be false by default because we are not collapsing at the moment, and area controls I'll say collapse example. Okay, so that is also one of the ways with which you can say retrieve form. So I'll say area controls with the retrieve form. Alright, so here I can say retrieve data using name, and after that I'll get to the end of that button, and I'll make my form. Okay, so here I'm going to say form. So class is going to be form group, and ID is going to be form data, since we are going to catch that in the JavaScript. Alright, and now I'll start making my label. So I'll say label, enter name for, let's say, name, and there will be an input tag, input type as text, name as name, ID as, so there is also an ID, I'll have to say name. Alright, class as form control, and finally we have a button. I'll say submit, class as btn primary, so I'm actually going to select btn dark, type as submit, and we have it. Okay, so my form is ready, and now I want to make this form actually, I would say, collapsible. Okay, so since it is going to be inside that button itself, so I'm actually going to cut this, and I'll make a div over here, and inside that div I'll say collapse, I'll say ID as retrieve form. Okay, so I have my form over here, and we have it. Okay, so my page is ready. Now let me check the page. So if I click on this, okay, so nothing is happening at the moment. Let me check. I think I'll have to take the JavaScript from the bootstrap. I'll go over here. I'll also copy this, save this. So JavaScript was actually missing. So if I now click on this retrieve data using name, I'll actually get that form. Okay, so I'll make a little bit of separation over here. So I'll say br, and even after the input type and everything, I'm going to make separations. Alright, so it is going to look a little bit more clean. Alright, and after the collapse also I'm going to make a separation. Alright, so I have my form. So inside this form now, if I post something, I'll get the data, and in order to do that I'll also require that output, which I'm going to get it let's say over here. Okay, so I'll say div, and this has the ID of out. Alright, and it is ready now. I'll say ABC, I'll say submit, and I have the data. Okay, so this actually looks a little bit, I would say, dirty. So what I'll do is I'll convert this div into UL. So UL is actually unordered list, and the class is going to be the list group. So list group. Alright, and I'll go to the script, and inside the script I'll say li, that is list, with the class as list group item. Alright, and I'll go to the end. I'll enclose the li. I'll go to the index. I'll create a separation. I'll say br. And now let us check. So I'll say ABC, I'll say submit, and we have it. Okay, so this is the way it works. Pretty decent way in order to retrieve the data. Now similarly, I'll be working towards posting data. Okay, so I can make significant changes in this, but posting data is completely fine. Okay, so it actually works. Even I can make changes in order to display all the data, but everything, but we actually wanted to pass a name using the form and retrieve the data. Now I'm going to go over here. What I'll do is I'll just copy this entire stuff, alright, and I'll make some changes. So instead of the retrieve data using the name, I'm going to say post data, and inside this collab I'm also going to check the ID, because ID is supposed to be quite different. Okay, so otherwise it doesn't interfere with the other ID. So here I'm going to say post collapse, so I can say for the data, and I'll just copy this and I'll replace it in the HR over here and in the end. Okay, in the area controls. After that I'm going to change the ID. So here I'll say post data, that is the form, and it is going to take the name. Alright, over here it is going to take the name. After that I'm going to copy this stuff twice, and I'll also require the label. Alright, so I'll copy this like this. Okay, and here I'm going to change the label. So I'll say enter music genre, and here I'll say genre, and instead of name I'm going to say, so I'll also change this. So I'll say post name. Here I'll change to post genre. Alright, and here instead of music, so enter the let's say enter game, and instead of name I'll say game over here, so that is the name, and in the ID I'm going to say post game. Alright, so this is my, I would say, very generic basic form, and in the name here I'm going to say game, and here in this I'm going to say genre. Okay, so my form is ready. So nothing I would say exciting, but this is the way it is done. And in the output section I'm going to change it to, let's say, post response, and this post response can be actually a div. Okay, so we just actually want an acknowledgement. Okay, we aren't concerned about what we are going to get over there and everything and whatnot. Okay, so this is the way, and let me check my form. Okay, so I have my form. Alright, so I have two independent forms. So in the post data now I'm actually going to apply the JavaScript so that we can enter the new data. So I'll go over here inside my JavaScript. I'm going to say document.getElementById. I'm going to go for my form. So my form is basically post data. Okay, so that is the name of my form. So I'm going to say post data with add event listener, which listens to submit. Okay, with the function post data. So that is the function that I'm going to make right now. So here I'm going to say function, and I'll say post data, which is going to say prevent default. So E for prevent default. And now I'll say let name is equal to document.getElementById, which is going to take post name dot value. After that I'm going to say let genre equal to document.getElementById, which takes post genre dot value. Let game is equal to document.getElementById, which takes post game followed by value. Alright, so my variables are in place. Now I'm going to apply the fetch API. So I'll say fetch with the http://localhost:5000/post data. And might be wondering why again post data, since we have post data in this route. Alright, and now since this is a post request, I'll have to stringify this. So right before that, let me fetch the response. So I'll say response with an arrow function, which is going to give us response.json, because we are returning something. And let us just console log at the moment. Alright, so I'll say data with an arrow function of console.log the data. All right, and now I'll come over here, I'll put a comma and I'll put a open in curly brace and I'll do it like this. Okay, so it is fetched. Now here I'm going to say method. So method is going to be post, followed by headers. So headers that I'll be passing are going to be the JSON application. So I'm going to say content hyphen type, which is application slash JSON, and then we have something known as body. So this body is actually going to give us the JSON.stringify, and inside this stringify I'm going to pass the everything. So I'm going to say name, and this is supposed, so this is a post data, and this post data is going to affect the API. So it takes name, genre and game, and I'm going to pass the same. Okay, so I'm going to pass that name that I've mentioned over here. Okay, so these are the values I'm fetching from the form, and these are going to be enclosed within the JSON stringify, which is going to given out to our API, and our API is going to return this, which we are going to fetch it over here and console log. Okay, that is the process. Here I'm going to say genre, which takes the genre variable name, and finally it takes game for the game. Okay, so my data is actually ready. I forgot the comma anyway. Alright, so this is it. I don't think there is nothing much more to explain in this, and now let us try to run this. Okay, so I'll go over here, post data. I'm going to put the name. So now I want to put, let's say, some new data in it. So I'll say JKL and the music genre. Okay, so we want to put a new music genre. I'll say trance, and it also expects us to put a new game. So I'll say Metro Exodus, and I'll say submit, and we have it. Okay, and now this has actually been inserted into the Mongo. Now if I go over here, I check the Mongo server, and if I say find, I get it. Okay, so this was something that was added earlier, and now I can also retrieve it. Okay, so I can retrieve it using the JKL. I'll say submit, and I get it. Okay, so this has actually been inserted into our data. So this is the way it actually interacts, and let me try with something new. So let me check my server. Yeah, my server is up and running, and now I have my two forms. So let me post the data first. So data that I want to post, let's say I want to make a new variable. I'll say ASDF, then I want to enter the music genre. Alright, so I'll say rap, and I want to enter the game. I want to enter new game. I'll say Warzone. I'll say submit, and it has been added. If I go to my Mongo, the record has actually been added, and now I can retrieve it. So inside retrieve data using name, I'll say ASDF. I'll say submit and get that. Okay, it is actually been retrieved from the database. And this is actually an entire full stack application, because you have Flask, you have JavaScript, and you have MongoDB. Similarly, I can perform a lot of stuff with, let's say, delete, update. Okay, you have to just make a form, you have to make significant change in the form, you have to work with the form. But this is the way it works. Okay, you can also retrieve this in the inner HTML. Okay, it actually is not going to make much sense teaching it and everything, because we have already spent a lot of time doing the JavaScript. Okay, so, and this was very straightforward. I don't think there is much more to teach, and you can actually have this entire code in the description box below. It is a GitHub link. Click on it. The repository will have all the files. You can download these files, experiment with them, and do the best. Okay, but I think you will have to go through the entire video once, even if it is possible, because Mongo commands are very difficult to recall every single time. Okay, you can also refer to the documentation. The documentation is pretty much standard. Okay, so but this is the way it works. And if you like my content, please do subscribe to my YouTube channel and click on the bell icon so that you get notified every single time whenever I post something new. So thank you for watching. Goodbye.